Hello and welcome to the You, Me, We Therapy podcast. I'm your host Jackie, and this is a podcast where I'm going to talk about emotions and discuss what they can teach us and what they are, how they feel. The reason being is because I'm a counsellor. I deal with emotions on a regular basis with regards to my job, how they tie into thoughts and how they tie into our behaviours, and my own personal view on what they are. Sometimes I'll have guests, sometimes it'll be just me. So stick around and I hope you enjoy today's episode. This podcast is not a substitute for seeking professional mental health guidance or advice. If you feel you are in crisis and unable to keep yourself safe, please take yourself to accident and emergency. So in today's episode, I want to discuss parenting, and not about when it's good, about when it gets a little bit not so good. Because it's quite a difficult job, and there are books out there, there are courses out there. I myself am a qualified parental coach. So, I've got the certificate. I walked up on a stage and shook someone's hand. It's a specialism I'm passionate about, yet here I want to discuss the shadow side of parenting, the things where it doesn't go right. I'll give you an example. I remember when I was training in parent training, basically parent training, another way of using it is parental coaching. The word training sounds a little bit condescending. It sounds a bit like I'm going to, have a parent and teach them how to jump through hoops and crawl through some sort of barrel and then do some sort of jazz hand dance at the end. It's not training like that, like I'm training a dog or something. But training, yes. Another word for it can be used as coach, like a parental coach, and it's quite an intensive intervention. It's a very serious intervention. I'm laughing because you really need to be in a position where you want to make a serious change between you and your child's behaviour. It's not a walk in the park going on a course of parental coaching. It tends to be a 6 to 8 week intensive piece of work, and great changes can be made. So I say that to say this. I remember when I was training, because I said I want to talk about the shadow side, right? So I remember when I was training and having to record some of my work for clinical evaluation, and having a child and a parent in the room working with them, and then it was time to wrap up and it was time to go back to class because we was in a school, and this child didn't want to leave the session because obviously why would they? We're in a room, we've got toys, sand, trays, paint, paper. Why would you want to leave that and go and do English or something? The child didn't want to leave the room. The parent needed to leave to go back to work. He couldn't be here all day doing this session, and he was getting frustrated with the child, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, this isn't going to plan. And in the end I ended up saying to the parent, okay, what would you normally do when your child doesn't want to listen to you? And it all went pear-shaped. Oh my gosh, the parent grabbed the child round the back of the neck, grabbed their coat, go on, get your stuff and get out of here, go on. They marched their child out the porta cabin we were in, across the playground, and I was there like scurrying behind them thinking, oh my goodness, why did I say do what you normally would do? The whole idea of this intervention is to find new ways of handling this. So yeah, I laugh because parenting is complex. Sometimes we get it really wrong, and there's a shadow side to it. In today's episode, I want to talk about how we can flip some negative experiences we may have in our own lives as individuals and use it as a way to teach our children how to have it benefit them. And I can share a bit about my story in this. I am a parent. I am a single parent. So there are times where I've learned something and I think, actually, if I could process this and be able to teach my child this in a child-friendly way, I think it could save them a lot of hassle. And today I want to talk about how to identify a bully, how you may be able to help your child identify a bully. And I learned this as an adult, really, through encounters with narcissism. Now, narcissism is a topic which I will go into at some point. It's a very broad topic. It's a very meaty topic. It has high emotions running with narcissism. If you go on YouTube and you just type in narcissist, you're going to see a plethora of information. People who have survived encounters with narcissists, different types of narcissists. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. There is so much information out there. And it's very intriguing, because if you don't know much about narcissism, lucky you, when you come across one, you'll find yourself needing to do a little bit of a research dig. And it's a bit of a rabbit hole, because it's a personality type that is very complex. And there may be people listening to this who are fully adept at what narcissism is. They may have had them in their family. They may have had parents or a parent who was a narcissist. They may have married a narcissist. They may work for a narcissistic boss. They may have narcissistic work colleagues. And I say that not to brush somebody with a diagnosis. I'm referring to it as a personality type, a set of traits that cause somebody to behave in a way that is quite narcissistic. Now, we all have tendencies to be narcissistic at times. We all can be self-serving, but I'm talking about it from a perspective of when somebody has this type of personality and we interact with them, because the chances are at some point your child may come across them. So how do you deal with that? And in a nutshell, a narcissist can be a bully. They can be overtly a bully, or they can be a sneaky bully. A lot of narcissism I describe as sneaky bully, and that can be a very complicated thing for a child to kind of navigate. So I'm going to give you an example of how I have brought the attention of this type of personality type to my child. Once I left my son at a play group, and when I came back for him, he was deeply distressed. He was very upset, very angry, and like he was about to burst if he hadn't burst already. And I've just walked in on the tail end of it. I asked him what was wrong, and he said he had just been told off for using a rude word. Now, at that point, I didn't feel like I needed to tell him off for using a rude word. I was quite intrigued as to what could have happened where he felt he needed to do that. When I asked him what happened, he said he was playing quite comfortably and a group of children were throwing bean bags at him, and he didn't like it, and he asked them to stop. And he got very distressed because they were not stopping. So he asked them again to stop, and they wouldn't. They continued. And the more distressed he got, the funnier they found it, to the point that he burst, like in terms, like a reference. I'm just referencing his emotional. He got very angry and swore at them. But then that's the point at which the teacher saw, and he got into trouble. So I explained to him that when you're in a situation with either an individual or a group of people where they're doing something, now their behaviour is what you see on the outside. Imagine you're a fly on the wall and you're observing somebody. That's the behaviour. Now their behaviour is doing something that's upsetting you, and you've done the right thing and asked them to stop, which is very assertive of you. I'm very proud of that, because it's always good to praise children when they do things that you are pleased with. Let them know there and then. So pleased that you were able to say you don't like that behaviour, stop. But the point at which you started to become more distressed, and they were aware of that, and they began to find it funny and amusing, and not only did they not stop, they continued doing that behaviour, causing you to feel more distressed. At that point, when you become aware that that's what's happening, I want you to be able to find a way to avoid somebody like that if possible, because what you've picked up on, or this is what I'm saying, this is not my exact wording, but what I was indicating to my son is what you're picking up on is somebody who is showing sadistic characteristics, someone who's getting a kick out of seeing you upset and distressed, and in fact it's not causing them to back down, it's actually ramping up their behaviour even more. That there is a red flag. That's very problematic. So I explained to my son that when you see somebody doing something that's causing you distress, you've let them know, and they're continuing doing it, in fact they're finding it amusing now, this is the point at which you need to be aware that this is somebody in the future. Do what you can to try to avoid them, because it's unkind and they are showing a lack of empathy. They are more interested in their being amused than what it could be like for the other person. And he understood that at that age. I'm paraphrasing it. I can't remember the exact words, and I made it as child friendly as possible, and I left room for a lot of discussion about it. I may have used the word sadistic, but I might have made it a little bit more, fluffy. Honestly, I can't remember. This is many years back. A lot of years have passed now. And but what I was trying to bring his attention to is that there are people out there who are more invested in their own needs than yours. And the point at which they don't mind hurting another person because it's entertaining, versus stepping back and thinking, actually, that might not be acceptable, I could be upsetting somebody. That there is a boundary crossed and what could be considered a red flag. And now I had learned that myself from encounters I've had, but really what really drove it home was an encounter I had with many years around somebody that was quite narcissistic. So by that stage I had done a lot of research, I had really done a lot of self-exploration, so I was able to deliver it in that way. But it's a way in which we can, the point I'm trying to make is the negative things that happen in our lives as parents, how do we make it digestible to give to your child, your children? And even if it's not your child, you could be somebody who's not a parent, but you are around children. You're an aunt, you're a cousin, you're a member of a community, and there's youngsters around you. How to make life lessons digestible for children. Narcissism, and understanding it from a young age, I think can help children identify a bully. Now, with a bully, obviously they've got needs too. It doesn't mean that every bully is a full-blown narcissist. There could be things going on in their home life, in their community, that's really causing them to act out in a way that's unpleasant. They themselves may not really like it. And I don't think that every school bully goes on to be a full-blown narcissist. No, I don't. But it's the indication of a red flag, to not overlook a red flag. Because what can be really complicated with bullying and children is where there's a dynamic where the bully is actually a friend. It's such a subtle, hard to quite put your finger on, where the child may have a desire to want to be close to a person, an individual, to be liked, to be accepted, yet the individual is actually a bully. And children can feed off other children like groupthink. I mean, it can happen to adults too, but we're talking about children here, where one person does something and the peer pressure's on for the other people to kind of do the same, and before you know it, it's a group of people behaving a certain way and targeting an individual. And it can be really hard for a child to really stand up for themselves in that type of dynamic. But I think it's important when we see a child distressed to kind of understand what is going on behind it. Because I could have come in and told him off completely for just swearing. Why would you do that? You know, don't use that kind of language, but actually more was going on. And I'm not saying I get it perfect, because what we're talking about is a shadow side of parenting, right? But the shadow side there was that I had to go through a very difficult experience with a narcissist that my child witnessed for some years, for me to be able to really process it, that I could then deliver it back to him in a child-friendly way and make use of the rough experience that I'd had. We can get caught up in needing to be perfect as parents and thinking we're going to be able to shelter our children from some of the messy things that we get caught up in life. But it's just not the case. And actually, I'm sure a level of resilience can be built up by a child witnessing how their parent handles a difficult situation. What does mum or dad do when they're stressed, when they don't feel satisfied with something that's happening in their life? How do they behave? Children have limited understanding of stuff. They're really, even though it may not seem obvious, but they really are really watching what you do and how you handle things and how you allow people to treat you. As a bit of a overview, as a bit of a template, a little bit of a template as to how they can maybe navigate their way through. Because they're a bit of you, they're a bit of the other parent, and they're much themselves. They're a bit of society, they're a bit of their friends. They're drinking it all in like a sponge. But how can we model the model? How can we live in a way that we would want our children to, if they're gonna mimic it, what would you like them to mimic out of the things that you do in your life? And it's interesting to be able to talk to a child about narcissism, because narcissism as a personality type starts at a young age for that person who develops it and becomes a narcissist. It starts around the ages of, I'd say, about, now I'm not saying this from a, this is my opinion, telling you, just being clear, this is my opinion. I'd say it starts from around the ages of 7, when a character's being formed, a little bit before, maybe, a little bit after, like the environment that they're growing up in can form different defenses, maladaptive defenses, that over time becomes narcissistic. They may have learnt that way of being from a parent. So then they'll take that behaviour out into the world, into school, and around friends, and then before you know it, they could be in a position of having that dynamic of narcissist and empath playing out from a very young age, from the playground. It then develops into late teens, and then it can develop into early adulthood and become prevalent in relationships. And I think it's actually like a public health issue. I don't think it's commonly known, maybe, unless, like I said at the beginning, if you go to YouTube and you do your own research. But I think it's the kind of a personality that maybe if you spoke to a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist at the higher ends of the mental health profession, they may know about it, but on a street level, I think we should all know about it. I don't think it should be kept in the halls of the academic world. I think we all need to know about it, because like I said, you can learn about these things to be able to teach your child a bit about a bully. And so they can have a level of assertiveness to help them in these dynamics. So yeah, I went a bit all over the place with this one. It's parenting and the shadow side of parenting, which I'm going to have other topics on. It's a little bit of a complex topic to broach. I don't know that I can make it as linear. I've not discussed emotions as such, but more of a dynamic that takes place in these events. So I hope you've been able to follow me here. All right, have a lovely day.